The blood stain on the clothing was due to the person vomiting blood. The viral hemorrhagic fever causes bleeding from all over, both internally and externally. Vomiting blood is one of the signs of this disease as well. This person died of viral hemorrhagic fever. The evidence that I'm drawing that conclusion from is... That's right. If this person was still alive after having had an attack of vomiting blood, I highly doubt that they'd go on without doing something about the bloody clothes. Thus, the traces of vomited blood on the clothing indicates that this person died soon after this attack.
We finally figured out the cause of death.
Yes. Long before the pandemic that is currently raging broke out, this person caught and died of the viral hemorrhagic fever that caused this quarantine. Who in the world are you?
Dr. Kimishima, if I may?
Go on.
I've noticed something.
I'm all ears.
Well, this antiviral reagent, Ashvin's, it was rejected by the FDA for its dangerous side effects. That, along with the large amount of antiviral drugs, these things aren't available to the general public.
You have a point. Someone who would have access to these things would be... Indeed. It would be someone who has the knowledge of these new drugs and their effects on viruses. It would also be someone who has the authority to obtain such information from the medical community.
That's what I think. Does that help a little?
It's fantastic. Let's move on to the next step. How can we identify this individual, little guy?
But all we have is the skeleton and personal effects.
That shouldn't be a problem. Or is my opinion of you overrated? If this person is in the health profession, then the FBI database should have an entry. By studying the bones, we can narrow down just who this person was.
Why'd you ask me if you already knew the answer to your own question?
We don't have time for complaining. Look up details about skeletons in our forensics database. Send what you find over to my computer immediately.
Yikes. Give me a moment. There, I found them. You want me to send them over to you, right?
Now it's time for the grand reveal. Let's compare the skeleton's characteristics with our information. Then we can confirm just who this person is. The skull has triangular orbital bones. Is there any information that can be deduced by the shape of the orbital bones? The cranial sutures have begun to fuse, but they aren't completely fused yet. This is what's causing the cranial sutures to resemble broken lines instead of solid ones. I recall that the cranial sutures can tell something about a body. There's no damage to the pelvis. I should look at its shape just in case. We can determine something from the shape of the pelvis. That's right. A person's age at death can be determined from the state of the cranial sutures. The cranial sutures here have partially fused, indicating that this person's age was... That was careless. Yes, the fusing is consistent with that of a person in their 50s. In other words, it means that this person was around 50 years old at the time of death. The German physician Blumenbach established a distinction of 5 major branches of human anatomy. One point mentioned in determining a person's race by skeletal features is the shape of the orbital bones. Comparing this with the materials at hand, this skeleton's race is indeed. This skull has the characteristics of a Caucasian. An individual's gender can be determined by the shape of the pelvis. According to the materials at hand, this skeleton's gender is yes, the pelvis is heart-shaped. Thus, we can deduce that this skeleton is male. 15 types of amino acids were detected in the skeleton. There was a very high concentration of nitrogen as well. If I compare this information with the materials available, how could I do that? That's right. We can assume that this person died somewhere around 2 years ago. Someone had this disease 2 years ago? Long before this pandemic began? This fact alone won't get us anywhere. But if I consider it in light of other information, a Caucasian male in his 50s who died 2 years ago and was familiar with viruses. All the information we need has been gathered. Now we'll be able to figure out whose remains these truly are.